Today I'm going to be revealing the filter I've been using for the past year. It's on Amazon and it's cheap. Let's get into the video. Firstly though, why would you even need a polarizing filter? And if you know the answer to this question, you can watch this bit or you can skip into the next bit of the video. But for those who don't know what a polarizing filter is, it cuts light. So when you're looking at a windscreen or you're looking at water, it can cut the reflections, giving you a truer to life image and just help you see through those glaring images. Now that may sound a little bit sort of irrelevant to some of photography, but it also does cut light on other things like leaves, pieces of grass, things like that. That foliage that reflects light, if you have a polarizing filter on, you can cut that light away and it will reveal really nice true to life greens. Now something else it's really useful for is dynamic range, because it cuts the highlights down, so it creates a tighter band for your camera to operate within. So you're not clipping the highlights, it's bringing that down into a more reasonable window. So it gives you basically better dynamic range. I use it all the time. I'm using it right now as well on this video, and you can see the highlights, they're pretty damn good. Okay, so the other things it's useful for that you may not expect as well, bluer skies. If you haven't seen this already, if you have a polarizing filter on and you turn it, you can see the difference very easily when the circular polarizing filter will be cutting through the light and you can get a really rich, deep, dark blue sky if you want. It's really just a great way to add more contrast to your image. So let's talk about some of the competitors to the Neewer filter, and we're going to be starting off with using some images from my last video. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below. So let's start with the 200mm Hoya. Now you can see here it's very, very sharp, great contrast, looks really nice. Next up is the Nano K, and you can see that is just awful. Very blurry, very sort of green tinge to it, really poor performance. Then there's the Nano X, very, very sharp, good contrast, very little colour fringing at all. And then here's what it looks like without any filter whatsoever. Lower contrast, not as good, obviously razor sharp. So that's the competitors. Now we're going to be pushing this filter to the absolute limits, and instead of taking these photos on a 200mm, I'm going to be showing you the Neewer filter on a 400mm. And there's a few things to take note of. So I'm going to be using a tripod in these photos. These are all shot on a tripod with a fast shutter speed using a 10-second remote trigger to get the most accurate photos possible and get the most consistent results. Right, so here we are, 400mm. This is the Neewer filter on, and as you can see, razor sharp. Really, really good image quality coming out of this filter. There is a bit of colour fringing, as you can see, compared to the no filter, but the sharpness is spot on. Now, if the colour does bother you, you can always adjust it in the camera settings using white balance, or you can just do it in post-production. But to be honest, it really isn't that apparent actually on photos, and the added contrast you're getting and the sharpness is spot on still. So let's just do a bit of a side-by-side comparison with the UV filter thrown into the mix as well. So here we are, this is the split screen, and in the top left I have the no filter, in the right we have the UV filter, and in the bottom right we have the polarizing filter. And I don't know if it's just because of the added contrast or just that it's cutting through more light or what, but the polarizing filter looks quite a lot better than the others in my opinion when put up against side by side. I'm actually really liking that. I don't know if it's just because of the added contrast or what, but yeah, really, really strong performance. And as you can see, they are all very sharp in general though. So while outside, I took some photos of this fern in broad daylight, just to give you an example of what a polarizing filter can do for an image. The fern is well exposed, the greens look really nice and vivid, the highlights are slightly bright, but overall it's a nice image. But then you put on a polarizing filter, and the greens become really rich and vibrant, and notice how we're not clipping the highlights whatsoever anymore, they're all perfectly preserved. It just looks like a much better image. So we do a little before and after, you can see there, it is just a massive difference. That's what a polarizing filter can do to an image. There are, however, a few things to be aware about with polarizing filters. They do always block light. So in this instance, the Neewer filter will block one stop of light. So if you're shooting at 400 ISO, for example, you'll have to then up it to 800 ISO just to have the same exposure level with the filter on versus off. So most wildlife photographers won't use polarizing filters. However, I've used this multiple times for wildlife for example with these beautiful golden hour little egrets, and it's worked unbelievably well. These are some of my favourite images of the year. And the other downside is something I've already mentioned, which is a bit of a colour tint you can expect from most polarizing filters. However, unless you're doing a side-by-side comparison, you're not going to know, as well as if it really does bother you, you can always change it either in camera or in post-production. Now, some of the things I absolutely love about this filter, compared to the Hoya and to the Nano K and Nano X, is how easy it is to turn and how smooth it is to turn. Whereas the Hoya is very gritty but easy to turn, the Nano X and the Nano K, they're very smooth but very hard to turn. Now, something you may have a slight problem with is this filter can get stuck on your lens a little bit. So if that does happen, don't really grip down on it. Instead, loosen your grip, be very gentle, and it will come off quite easily. It's just something that's just a bit of a weird thing. Don't really know why it happens. Happens a lot with the Nano X and the Nano K as well. But this one is just easy to get off if you just loosen your grip and twist gently. Now, to conclude the video, would I recommend a polarizing filter for an average or a beginner photographer? Absolutely. They add fantastic contrast to your images, give you richer greens and bluer skies. I can't recommend them enough. And if you want to get a really decent sort of polarizing filter, this is just genuinely fantastic. I can't recommend them enough. I wholeheartedly would suggest you get one of these before the prices go up too much. Their UV filters are also really great, so I have nothing bad to say about this. If you want a really top-end filter, I'm sure there's a £150 one you can get. Now, if you want to try out your first polarizing filter, I see no issue with getting a Nano K. They're cheap. I can get this for about £10 on sale on Amazon. And yes, it will soften your image and give you a bit of color tint, but it's a good way to try out your first polarizing filter. And then if you like it, you can upgrade to a nicer one afterwards. Well, with that being said, I'm going to link all these filters down below in the description just to help you guys out finding them. I get no kickback whatsoever from these. I'm not affiliated with Amazon or any of these brands. It's just to help it and make it easier for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, please like it and let me know in the comments so I can make more like it. Thank you ever so much once again. Goodbye for now.